We want to work this cycle to enable and encourage people to set up daily build packages. There are various reasons that there are various things they can help with, but we don't necessarily need to prescribe what people will use them for. To be able to implement it. So I believe the plan is to implement some of this in Launchpad, and perhaps you can speak about what Launchpad does, because that will obviously influence.
Okay, so Launchpad's plans are to provide a way for people to build daily packages based on BZR builder recipes, which in turn are based on BZR branches. So the idea in the normal case, the idea is that Launchpad, you'll tell Launchpad to combine the tip of an upstream branch with the tip of the source package imports we've got. Launchpad will combine them, fill them into a package, and have some mechanism for around updating them as the branches themselves update. That's the initial smallest cut thing.
Can't imagine that that's going to work very well because there's no relationship between those branches.
I said combine and not merge. There are some things that could be done, but we can.
Yeah. So if we can start splitting out the source packaging parts so that we're separating out the packaging bits from the original.ggz bits, then you can talk about that in more meaningful sense.
Yeah, or you can. The design guys last week were talking about some possible things that we can do with lunching the history on not doing that. Not doing it for SAR merge, but some sort of text merge. Also, recipes can be extended to academia directories.
So let me take a seat in the circle.
Sure.
Just to help get things over. So the first thing we should establish is what this work is about and what it's for, and what we're defining here. As articulated, the goal is to produce packages of tip for a set of upstreams, and the reason for that is to make bug triage against tip much easier, to support upstreams who want to build sort of larger communities of people who are running tip. So to build our relationship with upstreams by supporting them, giving them something cool, but also making it easier for us to triage bugs and say, is this still a bug in upstream? And if so, then we can have a conversation with upstream about that bug in a way that's relevant to them. So I'm not sure that all the Ubuntu patches are relevant for those packages.
Right.
The packaging is probably relevant because most of the packaging will do the job of packaging for that upstream. But many of the patches may not be relevant. So in that spirit, I'm not sure that we want to articulate this as a combination of the Ubuntu packages as they stand and tip.
Right.
Well, we could dynamically turn off patching when building. Basically, we take the Debian packaging from the packages currently in the archive, Debian folder. Most packages, not all of course, use one of three standardized build patch systems: CDBS, patch system, Quilt, or dpackage. It would not be extremely difficult to have it that when we do this import, we can easily strip out the code that applies to patches on the fly. It's usually 1 or 2 lines of code, and we can easily get it with a couple of grep scripts. So then we can use the Debian or Ubuntu packaging, no patches, and have it try and attempt to build. Of course, this is assuming that the patches are not needed to actually get the build to succeed.
How many folks are familiar with James Westby's work on BZR builder recipes? Okay, maybe it would be worth spending 5 minutes just quickly going through that work. James?
So BZR Builder is a BZR plugin which allows you to specify what we call a recipe, which defines a set of operations to do on a group of BZR branches. And these operations are basically merge and to nest, which is placing one inside another. And it does this by default it does this with the tips of all the branches, so that you can you would create a recipe which specified the upstream tip, and then perhaps merge in a tweak which made it build on the current release of Ubuntu or something, or perhaps just use it plain, and then add some packaging to it if that's not already provided in the upstream branch, and then it also and then puts that as a tree on disk, and then it also has a second command which wraps that up. So it builds the tree and then builds a source package out of that and allows you to push that into a PPA, such that you put the whole command in cron, and you then have a daily build of all the latest code, putting it in, and failure messages when it doesn't merge together anymore because a patch no longer applies or something like that. Or in this case, the merge doesn't work.
So the recipe is basically a set of branch composition statements where composing is either checking out a branch into a subdirectory of the tree that you're building up, or merging a branch into one of those subdirectories, right, or into one of those branches. So in that spirit, we probably don't want to be messing so much with the various build systems. I think in many cases people will use an existing Debian package as a template for what they do, but they'll create a new branch, which is the packaging effectively of tip. And they don't want any patches that apply to it, except for the case where they have to fix something just temporarily to make it build. But the packaging will be kind of pristine packaging.
I have a question regarding this. So whether we do apply Ubuntu patches or not, is this not? Can they just formulate this inside the recipe?
So if I look further down the pipeline, it would be great to end up with packages which you can build, where you can take the same package and you can say build this vendor neutral, or build it with the Ubuntu patches, or build it with Debian patches. So ideally, we want to get to that point. But I think it's very important that we start with the result of the recipe being a vendor neutral, just pure packaging of tip, effectively, because that makes it most relevant for our conversation with upstream.
Yes.
One of the things that in Ayatollah we were using the recipes that James did for some of our projects. But if we want the rest of our upstreams to use this, are we providing them the infrastructure to actually daily build those packages?
In Launchpad, we'll provide a mechanism whereby you can put the recipe into Launchpad, and then you can say, do you want a daily build, or do you want to build whenever there's a commit, or do you want to build specifically if there's a tag. So you should be able to create the recipe, and then if you just make a commit and tag it a particular way, then that goes into, for example, a milestone PDA. So you can have your branches, and you can be committing, and people can get updated packages of what you've committed, and then separately, some other people can just get it every time you tag it as a milestone, and other people can get it every time you tag it as a release. So you can just work in branches effectively, and use tags to dictate where those packages get broadcast effectively, to which audiences those packages get broadcast.
Yeah.
Are the recipes intelligent enough to manipulate packaging metadata, or is that a separate?
No, so someone would have to prepare a branch which had the pure packaging, the pristine packaging information in it, and it would kind of be up to them whether they did that as a group. So like the Debian just the Debian directory, or whether they branched it from upstream or not, because recipes support both.
So the recipe would remain relatively static, and someone would update the packaging information from the daily build to be at the bottom.
Yeah, so I think that would be like this. This is my understanding. Is the idea is that the recipe itself is a declarative way of just describing how the package is assembled and kind of what bits it draws together, rather than so much details about the packaging.
But the recipe, when you execute the recipe, it has certain data. For example, it knows the revisions of the various branches that you used. It could put that information in a place where the packaging could then pull that out and put that into package version numbers and so on and so forth. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, it has a mechanism for doing that on a limited scale, and so we can extend that mechanism with different bits to put in the version number and things like that.
Depending on how the branches are organized, anyway, if you the recipe can specify a merge. You can always revert all the patches by threads, for example. So you could start with the Ubuntu packaging and revert all the patches to get back to the pristine.
Yes, that is certainly possible. So that's
regarding the discussion with upstream, I thought the idea was to even across distribution synchronize which upstream release were delivered to everybody.
That's a separate discussion. That's not related to this. But yes, we would like. I do believe that we will see in the broader open source ecosystem an emerging cadence across distributions.
In that case, it seems to me that the tip is interesting, but another
stable branches are also interesting.
Yeah,
very much so. Yes. So this is a general mechanism that we're creating, and our specific articulated goal is to do it with tip branches. But if the general mechanism works, we can do a lot more with the beta.
But your priority number one is tip branches.
Just as a question off this, is how do I handle dependency management? Say you have, on very large projects, you're going to have it broken up into a lot of, you're going to have one, like, let's look at KDE, you have one giant project, which is a bunch of subcomponents that all depend upon each other. And if you have this build mechanism, like for every commit, you're going to need to make sure the build dependency and control file are going to build depend on the latest version, or else you're going to get interesting end results.
For sequencing of the builds.
Right, because if you end up, say you fix something in branch A and branch B again gets it fixed, it gets a code patch to work on the new behavior. You want B to depend on A. And if B then links against an old version of A, you're going to get, bad things, I assume.
So a case might be where an API is added to a library and used at the same time in the project, in the same day.
Right.
In a project which depends on it. And so if you build the project first, then it will fail to build because you need the updated library package to be there. And yes, this is a problem. However, that particular problem solves itself the next day.
I'm more concerned about the case where
if it happens frequently, then that will be a problem because every day you will fail to build. Only infrequently happens. So
I think you've got more of a problem if it does build, but it hasn't built against the latest.
That's my concern.
Can you articulate that again?
Basically, in the main archive, whenever a library sometimes gets updated, you get stuck with both new and old versions of the library as the transition's going on. What could happen is if you have two branches, one depends on the other. One's a library, one's an executable. You'll update the library so it generates a new package, and then you upload relatively quickly afterward your program that links against your library. Depending on how the builds run in the PPA, you may end up with the binary linking against the old one or the new one, unless you have unless you put the version field in the build depends line. The upshot of this is that depending on the staggering of builds, you may end up
because we can't sequence effectively. We can't require that the library build was committed and published.
Right. There's
for the right.
Yeah, PPAs have.
So you can. So Robert has contributed a change which I'm currently reviewing, which allows you to block the upload until the PPA. So it uses the Launchpad API to watch the PPA until the binaries are published. So the command does not return until it's published. So that might be one way. If we know the ordering up front, then that
so
might
you
be
automate the intelligence in the upload sequence effect.
Yes, and the other way is to encode it into build depends, so that the automatic build sequencing based on dependency weights will already take care of the sequencing. However, that is
it seems nasty to have that sort of level of granularity in the.
It requires changing the package data, and it requires you to know about all of the packages when you're building one.
It seems smarter to have it. If we had pipeline publishing.
I wonder how that, well, I don't know if it will help in all the cases here.
No, you would just block for that less time.
Well, one thing we could do is just do the substitution variables, basically the control file you'll have of build depends, library A, and then parentheses, and then a substitution variable, which will then automatically be filled in by Visitor Builder, which will query Launchpad, get what the most recent source version is, and then the most recent version of the repo, and then put it in there. So the build will upload. Launchpad will look at it, see that this is not in the PPA, and automatically dependency wait until the build either is uploaded or then does.
However, to know which binary version is currently published, you need the upload and the build and the publishing to already have happened. So that doesn't win you anything. However,
Launchpad
source package first.
as long as you're not doing something too multi, just knowing the source package.
As long as you're not munging the version numbers in the binary, you can.
Which is rare, but yeah.
The other possibility is you just look at the
Well, it's rare, but it's also the same people that frequently are bootstrapping stuff
Right.
by doing timed uploads instead of bothering with actually making dependencies, right?
So it's quite a rare case. Probably not going to be going on in daily builds, I think. So that is possible, but it makes me uneasy that when building one recipe, you need to query other packages on Launchpad about their current status. But
I've been looking at the documentation while I'm talking. My understanding is the current dev version by default is basically you put a plus sign and a timestamp.
That's what we do. Yeah.
Maybe it would be a better idea if instead of going to a timestamp, we use the repo revision number, and then you can directly depend on that, because then all you have to do is query what the other packages are as part of the builder's recipe. Like Visitor could look at lib A branch, get the most recent revision off that, then put that in the control file automatically, so everything will build with the newest version. Of course, this doesn't help in the case where lib A fails to build from source, and lib B will definitely try and find a binary that doesn't, a library that won't build. But it's another possibility.
But you don't get broken steps in that case. But,
It's claimed, right?
yeah. There's just quite a lot going on there. So
One of the
it's quite hard to
things
specify
that's-
what you want to do.
Yeah, one of the things that's useful out of this is to report build failures as well. So we need to make sure.
And merge failures. Because it's like it's a multi-step process. Like there are failures that can happen in every way, and Launchpad needs to be very, very good at helping people get
Telling the
past it.
right person in the right way.
Yeah, and sort of helping them feel encouraged to get over this current failure and move on to the next failure.
So in folks who've worked with this, how fragile do these things tend to be? I mean, if you set a recipe up, is it generally fire and forget, and then every couple of weeks you have to fiddle with it? Or is it fragile? I mean,
In my use, the most times I have to touch it is to change the version number at release. So I do the Bazaar setup project. And when Bazaar puts out a new release, I just have to go in there and say, we're now working on 2.1 basis.
so generally it's a pretty stable experience.
In Bazaar, it is, yeah. It's just mainly when the most problems you have are when like files move around and things like that. So Bazaar recently renamed like some of the documentation paths to move to Sphinx, and so the build failed because the PDFs went out at a different place, which is 2 minutes to fix it. But
And it's easier to fix it little by little than it is if you've missed all of those little changes, because you've actually got the context of the change right there. You can look at
what happened.
just what happened in that little in those changes there.
Yeah. So one thing I want to add, but I haven't got around to yet, is to put in the Debian changelog like short logs of each of the revisions since the last time it was built. So you can just open the Debian changelog and see the commit, the first line of the commits of all that's happened. So that might just give you like, documentation path changed. That's probably what it is, and go directly to the right particular revision, which I think would be quite useful because one of these lines has broken the thing, so it would help with bisecting much quicker.
I did this manually years ago with a couple of CVS trees, and it was very stable. Just with shell scripts and whatnot, it was very stable, and it's fairly rare for a branch change to really bugger up the packaging.
Yeah. So I imagine that some projects will have problems with lots of build failures, but the ones I've worked on have been fine. So they're projects where they take care of the trouble, so you don't really get problems.
Even the projects that do have a lot of build failures might see a drastic bump in quality if they start getting that feedback?
Well, so my hope is that what we'll get is projects will then start to rapidly grow the number of people who are actually running TIP, which means the number of people who see a problem when it gets committed rather than waiting for a milestone or a beta or something like that. So that should have a good impact on quality generally upstream.
It's a killer tool for building QA teams.
But we are experimenting that with BizDev itself. Even with L3 using BizDev Builder, but because we have 3 PPAs plus the trunk, plus people who run from the trunk, we really see various bugs coming at various times from the different people using the PPAs.
It'd be interesting to know how many people are subscribed to each of those PPAs. I think you'd see like an order of magnitude from building from CVS or building from version control to at least an automated packaging of TIP, and then an order of magnitude up to milestones, and an order of magnitude up to betas,
yes.
An order of
We
magnitude
have
up to
people running
then
from trunk,
Ubuntu itself, right?
people running from Nightcase, then from betas, and then from stable,
Yeah.
and then from all distributions, other distributions, all these other versions.
Another thought to think about is that a couple of build systems, CMake coming to the top of my mind, has support for continuous build testing. Probably be nice to have a way to have CMake automatically work with Launchpad, because if a project's also using CMake, it's probably also going to be used on platforms that are not Linux-based, Mac OS X, Windows coming to mind. So if we could get Launchpad to talk to that and report to a C-instance dashboard, like have all the builds automatically pop up, that would definitely help a lot, because getting continuous build going on multiple platforms with CMake can be a pain because you have to run the build source yourself. You can even offload Linux builds and make it very easy for people to instead install resulting devs. It would be a really large win for any upstream project using that.
One of the things that I'm curious about is, I don't know if it's been discussed here already, is when we talk about package of the day, it's about a single package. Do we handle collections of packages that we want to build together? I mean, it's kind of a breakout of the idea that Michael's talking about, where you have build dependencies. Or what about when you, let's say the version that you're building against is very old in Ubuntu, and then one of the packages has, you're doing a massive transition across a bunch of different packages, like adding a capability which is useful there. Is there a way of us getting, would you be able to create a repository which contained all those packages, all that collection of packages there, so you'd actually be able to see?
Yeah, why wouldn't you do that? It's just connecting multiple recipes up to a single PPA.
So you could do that?
Yeah. And I think we'll see naturally that there are some PPAs which are just very specific, like just Thunderbird,
right,
and other PPAs which tend to be a whole bunch of things. As you described, like sets of interest groups.
So you actually, it's a set of recipes which will go into a PPA, is that it?
I think, the connection between, it's not just a one-to-one mapping.
Right. Okay.
You basically set up a recipe, and then separately you set up the build instruction that says, I want to build that recipe into this PPA when these conditions are met. Kind of.
Right, and it would build depend from itself.
I don't know.
You would have to, right?
You can link PPAs to.
Well, sure.
So another dimension.
Manually, yeah.
But we may well want to be building one recipe in multiple PPAs.
Right.
Yeah.
But the recipe requires a target archive in addition.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. The build itself, and in fact the instruction to build, is a link between the recipe and the. The recipe format also allows for composing recipes. So further down the line, I imagine people will say, I built a recipe for a tip branch, right, against Ubuntu Devel, and someone else could take that recipe and say, I've got a recipe for a tip branch with this extra funky patch merged in. And they wouldn't have to copy the recipe, they effectively inherit it.
I'm less clear on having UI for that one looking like that.
So do you have projects identified to try this stuff out there? to experiment with. We have a tight relationship.
So given the goal of building a relationship with upstream, especially around bug conversations, we think it's about 100 packages gives you 50% of the bugs.
Yeah. That's fair.
So that would be a target set.
We've already got Bazaar and I think iTaler using daily builds already, and we're reaching out to other upstreams to see how interested they are right off the bat, and see if they want to join.
Yeah, I'd like to volunteer to Ubuntu One stuff.
Sure.
I'd love to get this stuff all working. We've got a few packages in main and a handful of packages in universe.
So
The kernel team already has, I believe, some tip kernels.
The question there. Will the PPA build the all keys?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, that's been a live concern.
Yeah, no, we'll have plenty of build capacity.
Should be low on librarian space then.
Yeah. That too.
So yeah, garbage collection.
Yes.
So in terms of which projects might be interested, I know Jonathan in here. I know he's spoken to a few, and they have shown some interest, but not particularly a willingness to set up all the infrastructure to do it. So I think saying just click a few buttons in Launchpad and you can have it for yourself will be a great help with that part. So there's an interest, but
I think we want to create. I think this will turn into a community. Right? I think there'll be a set of developers who are really interested in doing this, and I think one developer can probably cover 10 or 20 upstreams. Given that you're explicitly not trying to patch the upstream in interesting ways, you're really just packaging, in fact, with no expression of policy, effectively. So perhaps a mailing list for folks who are interested in this, some policy guidelines, some sort of documentations to, tutorials and stuff like that.
Could you say that again? I might have missed something earlier. You said just doing this as packaging does not go against what PPA or our PPAs to do.
So our PPAs are general. People can do anything they like in PPAs.
Yeah, but we prefer that they don't just package upstream stuff unmodified.
For this specific initiative, the reverse is true.
Okay.
For this specific initiative, we're actually trying to build a relationship with upstream so we can say, look, we'll give your users a package of your code, tip, unmodified. The only stuff we're doing is packaging policy stuff, which is this binary goes here and this binary goes there, and this is how it fits into the rest of the system, which I think we're authoritative on, and upstreams aren't going to be upset about that.
There is a use case that have been sent to the UDD list, which is also as a developer, you find a bug in the package you're using currently in Ubuntu. You get the source branch, you fix the bug, you create a PPA fixing the bug so that other people can use it. So that could also be a medium to communicate with upstream, saying, hey, that fixed have been tested by
These people, yeah.
These people.
If we have download stats on PPAs, then that would be
and the patches there.
Yeah.
So it's not really packaging, but it's helping upstream.
You mentioned that some people are willing to set up some infrastructure. Buttons and launchpad things to do it.
yes.
If there's something to try out now, we're willing to. We've got EC2 accounts and there's servers available that we're willing to set up infrastructure. I can put something on it right away.
I can talk to you later on, and then I really think the X team set up for themselves. I think they're using those codings because unfortunately there's a chunk of stuff you have to go with it. So you need to have a password as GPT key, which is not a, so you need a separate launchpad account to get that to if you're able to develop a because
Yeah, we've got that stuff all already for Atomic.
so yeah, that's you're halfway there. But for most people, that's like second launchpad account. Systems are obviously quite on like it's a bit too much just to get started.
One of the things on Quentin's comment, that one of the things I would really like to see in Launchpad is an improved selection of branches in general, so that you can say, find me the branch that fits, like the current branch selectors.
I'm actually working on that right now because of Stewart Langridge's
Nice.
post and wonderful bug report. I found that bug and said, you did so much work that I will fix this for you personally right now.
Good.
So that is actually being fixed.
Yeah, great. Because that would just go a huge way to making that really easy.
Yeah, so that's more talking about put this branch into this PPA, which is a bit different from doing something data, but similar enough and very, very useful.
Right. Well, I mean, if once the recipe inheritance stuff gets in place, you take your daily build recipe, and then you say, I want to merge in the branch that fixes this bug, and then that. The thing I'm worried most about in terms of the flow on Launchpad is making it clear to people and making it easy for people to create the recipe and the pure packaging branch.
Yes.
Excluding patches.
Yeah, because it's a two-step process and it's not clear which one comes before the other. And
is it really possible to exclude patches from the pure packaging?
As in, it's possible for people to do it manually, or what?
Conceptually.
Yeah. Like turning off the ability to patch the code wouldn't necessarily be a good idea, because you sometimes need something to make you build at all or something like that. But having a way to start by default with no patches, the ability to add them back in one by one as needed might be okay.
But you can you can tweak the packaging branch in the recipe to do that. Couldn't you have a packaging branch with no patches whatsoever?
Yes.
And then if you see, this doesn't even build or doesn't even run without this other patch, you could just add these patches that are really required to a packaging branch.
Yes.
So the recipe stays the same, but just by tweaking the packaging branch, you control what patches are applied at all.
Yes, that's what you can do that, which is like the existing way of doing packaging, or you can merge the patches directly into the upstream branch using Bazaar.
Right.
And if they're a Launchpad using upstream Bazaar, if they're a Launchpad Bazaar using upstream, then that's a good way to do it, because you've got the branch and you can propose it for merge into the upstream at the same time as you add it to the packaging to make the daily build work.
And another visual advantage of that is you look at the recipe and you see what's wrong with the upstream that's stopping it from building quite clearly.
Yes.
Cool. So one of the issues that I think that Launchpad's going to have to deal with, that again needs to be thought about, is some upstreams, like most canonical run upstreams, only merge stuff to trunk when they're guaranteed to build. Like we don't ever have a broken trunk. But a lot of upstreams just commit to trunk all the time,
so there'll be many back movements to choose.
Right, and if we build on commit, then that's not something that anyone would want. Like it's not something the upstream would want, and it's not something that we want.
Yeah.
So.
And it's not even necessarily something that upstream would want, right? I mean, I guess unless they're tracking.
I can imagine that it's not likely that they're going to get an instant build. Like if I could commit whatever I want to trunk and get someone else to do a build like that for me, yeah, I'd love that. But if it's going to take a few hours, which is probably the case, then.
Well, I just cognitive color issue half of this. So currently PPAs, when you supersede something, if it's still building, it's going to finish that build. So if you have 5 or 6 commits all at once, that PPA is about to get slammed with 5 or 6 uploads, and then suddenly monopolize the PPA builders
Right. These are cases that we need to handle. I expect that at the very least for an initial sanity of engineering kind of cut, we just only build things once a day.
Yeah, I think if we want to do continuous build migration, then Launchpad will have to finally grow the abort build feature that has.
Just about to say that. I don't want to be aborting builds.
Abort on supersede.
Well, the thing is that if you upload, let's say you have open office using this system, and free people commit all at once. I don't want to see free build to open office running concurrently, because that'll tie up the buildees for hours.
Sure, and we wouldn't.
So these free builds running concurrently, like two of them are referred to superseded versions.
Right.
Once Launchpad dispatches that build, it will keep running and then fail to upload.
Well, Launchpad's communication with buildees does not allow it to abort a build right now.
So what I'm saying is we could implement like abort on supersede. You could just reset the builder and say this has been superseded. Just cancel the build, reset the builder.
You can't do it right now.
That's
what he's proposing
from
is that we develop towards that.
and it needs to grow that. I mean, it's already known what to do it. It just has never grown it.
Yeah.
Today, the way you abort a build is you poke Lamont, and he gets tired of that really quickly.
I mean, we even have the button in Launchpad to abort and says this feature is not implemented.
Yes, yeah, it's really nice. The button's there, and you click it, and it says sorry.
The button is on the UI. That's not
You can only see it if you're building in, but there's an abort build button, and you click it and it says this build cannot be abort feature is not implemented.
Right. Okay.
It's a nice message. You know what's going on.
The more informative things there is. So,
Don't complain about this.
James, take a bit of notes from that thread. I don't think we've got any actions written down yet when we're getting towards the end of the session, or any plans or anything like that.
True.
The Launchpad team has been, and the Bazaar team have been talking a lot about this, and we've been talking a lot, and a lot of this discussion's been taking place on Ubuntu Distributed Devel and on Launchpad Dev, and so there has been a lot of conversation, and I think most of us are fairly clear on our next steps on Launchpad, but I'm happy to talk about them with the group.
I think it would be good if we knew what features we would get in the next 6 months, such that we can.
If you knew, well, yes, it would be great if you knew that.
then we can have plan things to go alongside that growth.
Yeah. So we have some work that we need to do to the buildees first before any of this can go ahead. And that's not trivial. Like, we need to change the buildees from being things that build packages to being things that build things.
Things that run do things.
Yeah, do things, yeah. There's a substantial amount of work there, which we're working on right now. We want to have, I think we can be pretty confident of having, at the very least, the facility to build from recipes to archives in the simplest possible way in the next 6 months. Like, that's something we can definitely. I'm quite confident that we can do. There's a lot of UI around. Like, there's the basic UI of just defining this thing and then building it and seeing what that is. Like, that's one UI. But then there's all of the other more interesting things about how the rest of Launchpad links to this. Like, we don't want it to be like a page on its own in Launchpad that you have to URL hack to get to, and you only discover if you know about it. So that stuff needs to be spec'd. And
one final point I have is that as part of this, we probably should have an ability to notify a test suit pass-fail. Because right now you can run the test suit as part of rules, but if you have it so the test failing is not fatal, you'll get a notification about it, and the tests do fail or make it fatal, then the build explodes and you have no dev, and you have to build it from source to reproduce the behavior. So it may be nice, I don't know how we do it, is if Launchpad could grow some feature to separate running the test suite of a package.
I don't think that's a Launchpad thing. I think that's a Debian packaging thing. We need to go to Debian with a proposal for how to do that, and then Launchpad could
grow a feature.
Implement that proposal. I don't think they can just do that and decide on the way to do it.
Well, there is the check target in rules. There is some support for this in in the policy. Probably something for future discussion. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. I think one of the things I want to get the basic thing going as soon as possible, so we can, because I think the failing cases are the most interesting cases here. Like they're the ones that can actually help people the most, I think, in the initial cut. So I really want to, I think we're only going to really understand those when people start using them. So, yeah. In terms of building a community around it, I don't have a clear plan of action. I mean, Mark suggested mailing list. We could perhaps use Ubuntu Distributed Developer that.
There is already a Launchpad team we could
Oh, there's the data builds team. Yeah, we can run some of that.
we could use that, or we could replicate it and use Ubuntu Distributed Developer.
Sure. Let's.
Probably makes some sense to have a separate Launchpad list to discuss technical details.
Sure. So maybe we'll. Yeah.
We'll just keep it on Launchpad there for
It's been a little bit, even over the last week or so, now that we've been posting to Ubuntu Distributed Develop, it has been a bit weird talking about the Launchpad dev stuff and the Ubuntu Distributed Develop stuff. So I don't know how to. I don't know what to do about that.
So, what we have so far is Launchpad doing a lot of stuff and a mailing list.
Well done. I think Ubuntu is the winner.
Yeah, so we probably need more than just a mailing list. Or is it a build a feature and they will come and then we will have lots of people to discuss this with?
I don't have any clear ideas. What do you think?
I think it would be useful if we could get the early adopters to discuss how best practices and type of stuff, such that when it's available for the masses in Launchpad.
And if you're trying to grow the pool of early adopters, it's probably useful to have some sort of IRC meeting or feedback session every couple of weeks where you talk about who's using it so far, what are the problems they've run into, what are the progress that's been made, who's the next target to get them to adopt. Like if somebody's already reached out and talked with them.
Okay.
People, so you can see that pool growing and what's stopping it from growing or what problems have been discovered so far. And the people who did start working on it early can really feel like, oh yeah, there's progress being made and I'm going to listen to them.
Let's in fact get an IRC channel created for this. I think would be a good idea. There's enough cross collaborations.
Just another IRC.
Yeah, well, it's just another mailing list.
So IRC channel mailing list, wiki page.
Launchpad group.
Check them all. Yeah.
Well, there's already a Launchpad group. So
there is a wiki page, wiki.ubuntu.com/dailybuilds, and everything under that. So it would be great if you have experience to contribute.
I will support anything that results in less email.
Thermonuclear war. Yeah, that dies down real quick. Yeah, I think I don't know. Like I actually this little page. By the way, Launchpad has one. Plans for me one. Sorry.
So it would also be great if some of the people here were to start using it that haven't tried it previously. So if you have, it's better when you actually care about the package, care about the upstream. So if you have something which you either already built from BZR or would like to but can't be bothered, then please consider setting something up. And feel free to talk to me and I can give you pointers to the steps that are involved. is not too much work.
Or, in fact, don't even talk to James, just ask her a question on Daddy, what's adding this?
That's an even better way of doing it, yes.
Yeah.
Or just use the documentation that's already available.
Somehow they're still going to ask you.
Is there any stuff that needs to happen, other stuff that needs to happen other than on Launchpad? So Bazaar's working on getting more and more imports for upstream development. That's one thing that they're focusing a lot on.
That was another question I was going to ask, is the upstream code, is that going to be imported into Launchpad?
Yes.
Regularly enough?
Probably. So we currently import upstreams for any given upstream that's imported, we import it every 6 hours. Thing is, the number of imports we have is the number of functioning imports we have is less than a tenth of the number of packages that are in Ubuntu. And I don't know how they correlate with the top 100 packages that we're talking about. Actually, this is something that I would something that would help Launchpad immensely, is if the people who are interested in this stuff can just name the packages that they're interested in.
Yeah. Well, Launchpad already has the list of the top 100.
And is that?
So we
should focus on those then.
We should cross-reference that list with the list of. We should make sure we know the upstream projects for them and that they have a functioning code.
Yeah.
Would we want to consider tying in the mirroring of someone's upstream to Launchpad with the ongoing daily build?
Probably. I mean, they're kind of architecturally disjoint.
Yeah.
Like when you get the update, there's just a Launchpad internal event that says tip changed, and they don't care whether it was pushed or whether it was mirrored or whatever. So it's kind of
makes sense. If you're going to do a daily build, make sure you keep upstreams up to date.
Oh yeah, and also make sure they're available. Like make sure people can get them.
Actually, if you've been unable to update it since the last build, you want to disable daily builds.
Yeah, you only want to build if there's been a change. Yeah. So I think there are some things we can do like that. Really nice architecture, but
we had some funky messaging system.
Yes. Yes.
What depends?
Okay. Well. Well, excellent.
So now,
ready next week.
Now we move to Rio Grande.
Yeah.
Do it all again.
Yeah.
So we're having a more Launchpad. Well, that was pretty Launchpad overtake. Even more Launchpad overtake and more. What would be the word? Feature specification session. Launchpad.
I guess.
What's yours for this one?
Did I?